Welcome back to the channel, Real Repairs for Real Customers. First of all, thank you for all those that have checked in with us. As a result of the recent hurricane, compared to the devastation that other people have been experiencing, all I can say is that we've had 1 week of inconvenience. And we're preparing for another week where we might have to host family that's directly in the path of another storm. But the purpose of this video is to introduce something new, and this is the Comprehensive Flexible Materials Repair Interactive Workbook. Why do we need something new? Well, the industry is changing at a faster rate than we've ever seen before. So it would stand to reason that we need to keep up with the times. And this is especially important when we see what's happening in the industry. We see instructors in the industry that are not giving instruction that is practical at all for the students. They're taking the money and running. They're taking the money, handing them a certificate, handing them a repair manual, and then the student is left without the ability to work. So something needs to be done different. There is a focus that the industry needs to change. Also, as part of the instruction, we find that folks are relying on 30-year-old methods and products, and they're not modernizing what they're doing. If you're stuck with the training from 30 years ago, you're going to find that every repair item and every repair method has changed. People associated with franchises also find themselves in a similar dilemma, is that what they were taught to do back in the day was already outdated, and now where are they going to go for more advanced training? Some in the franchises find they need a continuing education, and the franchises are not able to provide that. So they're left in the lurch too. So that's why we need a new comprehensive flexible materials repair. And we need it in an interactive workbook. Now, just to give a little bit of history, and I'll be very brief, years ago, for the training week for instructors, it was pretty much just haphazard training. There was no list, there was no regimen of training, no outline to go by. And so what I drew up for the instructors was a training week list, which was pretty comprehensive in that it covered everything under the sun for all the industry. For example, automotive and furniture and marine, and it had everything you could possibly think of in here. And the idea for that was that the instructor could review the list and just make sure that he didn't accidentally omit something that the student needed. So that served a good purpose for many years for the instructors. The other situation in which there was instruction were the one-day seminars. But bear in mind, the one-day seminars are product-oriented. In other words, a distributor would put on the seminar, and we'd have all of these products, and we want to showcase how to use all the products. It wasn't repair-oriented, even though there was some instruction along the way to show how to use the products. But the focus was much different. And what we found nowadays is that folks want 3 days of training. That means that we can no longer use this big list here as a basis for instruction. We have to condense training into 3 days. And we have to focus on the specific need of the student. And that gave rise, as you know from videos that I've posted already, it gave rise to a targeted training list. If the student is working only in automotive, then there's no need to cover everything associated with marine, right, or furniture. And in addition to that, when we are going to teach automotive repair, we can target our training to the item in the car that needs repaired. And we know what needs repaired, right? Steering wheels, seats, consoles, plastic trim. So we can target just those repairable items. And for each of those items, we can have a suggested approach, product, right? A suggested product for each one of those. And if we extrapolate from all of those items, all of those products, we now have also a more condensed product list, a smaller kit to keep our focus, because in a 3-day program, we don't have that much time. We need to make the best use of our time as possible for just the things that the student is going to use the first day he goes back out there to work. And we want to take advantage of those 3 days to build up as much confidence as possible, so when he goes out there fresh and green, he does have some measure of confidence. So let's take a brief look at what's new in the workbook. We're going to highlight with the workbook a new presentation to better engage the student. Now, in the short, what this involves is when I'm training, I have an outline that I follow to progressively cover a subject. But why not give the student the same outline in question form? That way the student becomes part of the training. It engages the student. We'll look a little closer at that later on. Next, obviously, as we've discussed, the instructor needs to pay more attention to what his role is in interacting with the student. Also, this interactive workbook, because the student is entering the answers, we have a new viewpoint of the student's progress. And a result of witnessing the student's progress in this manner, we could use the interactive workbook as a new criteria as a basis for certification. That's a big deal. Well, it's a big deal to me. But consider that in the past there has been no measurement by which we could say that someone is actually certified to do the work required. Consider this interactive workbook as a beginning of that process. And because this is not a repair manual, but a workbook, each page in the workbook can be updated as needed. Isn't that nice? Also, for any entity, whether it's a training supplier, a product supplier, or any franchise, any business whatsoever, this material can be customized for your business for advanced education. Now, it just so happens as I was compiling this information to present to you for the workbook, I had a few repairs, and I thought it might be nice to take a snapshot of repairs, sort of a day in the life of a technician, to contrast someone who has not taken the training to someone who has taken the training, and how it benefits them in the real world, and how we can see the distinction between what we see in the industry today, which is a lot of fraud, but the distinction between that and real craftsmanship in the industry. Let's take this little snapshot just to get a comparison. So on this day, we were presented with this previous repair. This was done by a person associated with a franchise. First of all, we don't know what we're looking at here. And we're seeing this color obviously is flaking off. The color is not even correct. And we want to get down and see what it was that they were repairing to begin with. The first thing we notice about the repair is that there is a rectangular area that's hard. It's hard as a rock here. Why? So the technician thought that by some wizardry they were going to make a dent in this repair, but it didn't seem to work out at all. So you can't just go on hoping that it's repaired and have it happen. It takes real training and real skills. Having stripped all of the wrong color off of there, we see this small slice, and now we understand also what's happened in this rigid triangular area that's been saturated with a thin super glue, and it's made the material hard. You have to wonder if the person has had any education at all regarding urethane. What they really need is an updated educational program. They need continuing education. But if you were to ask them, they would probably say, nope, I know how to fix it. The same day, I took several parts back to the shop for recolor and repair. We were scheduled to have 24 hours of rain before Hurricane Helene hit, and I was determined to have everything done come Helene or high water. So look at these jobs through the eye of someone that's already been through this interactive workbook course. The first item on the agenda is this piece of leather that needs to be colored the same as the seat. And so this might pose a challenge to some, but not if you've been through the class. These two panels here are going to be replaced, and so the upholstery shop has asked us to change the color of that leather to match. For another shop, we have this older Mercedes dash, worth now $1,000, but it's the wrong color on the bottom. So we have to change the color. And our target color is the door panel color. So in addition to that, there's damage on the door panel. So while we have it, we'll fix this cracked up vinyl, and then we'll have the color all ready, and we'll be able to color the dash to match. We also, on a Rolls Royce, this is the original color, we have to match this new windlace, which has been made up. And so that's our next color challenge. Incidentally, we also have to order some clips for these GM plastic trim pieces, and we have to order a little bit of this carpet. This is the carpet we're going to order. It comes 80 inches wide, so it'll fit across the vehicle, and we just need a yard of that. We need to fix in this vehicle what the dog damaged beyond all belief. We have these 4 black plastic trim pieces for an older Camaro. These are replacement pieces. We know that that black cannot be made this red. It's the impossible color change. Now this is your work if you've been through the class. You know how to match this gray color. We know that grays can ping pong between a lot of different colors. We could have the violet-yellow relationship going on. We could have the red-green relationship going on. We could have the blue and orange relationship going on. And sometimes it's a fine balance between all of those. But you stick with the theory and you arrive at the target color. Clips and carpet are ordered. And because you went through the class, you were able to do this impossible job. You learned about making a custom primer. You learned how to put light, highly atomized coats to give you that finish that no one else can get. You matched a color everyone else struggles with. You also now realize that this job represents twice the work and 3 times the product of a normal recolor job. So you know now you can charge accordingly. You were able to successfully coat this leather to match the seat. We've also cleaned the seat bottom and colored that. The panel that we did not change is this rear panel and this side panel. Those will remain forever the original color for us to check. by. Because you took the class, you learned that the weight of the repair material needs to mimic the weight of our target material. So you have used a heavier weighted vinyl repair compound mixed with the plastic powder. This gives us strength and reinforcement that mimics the vinyl already on the door panel. This was a good instance, too, where we could use the oxen grain. We really like oxen grain when we have a chance to use it because it hides everything. It makes us look better than we are. Now that we had the color, we can go right to the dash. With a lot of masking, we're able to get that looking really nice. And here's the finished product on the door. By the way, all we had to do was color the top panel on this door. The rest of it was in good shape, so no need to do the entire door. I knew you were looking for maybe a bit more up-close view, so this is the final product. And you're proud of this because you took the course and you knew how to apply true craftsmanship to your repairs. Another aspect of the new training program that I've mentioned is a list that I keep for myself, and that's called the Repair Technician Personalized Coaching. And this coaching is something that I can use to remind myself of what I need to convey to the student. Sometimes I'll be teaching a student and taking something for granted and they don't quite grasp it. And I realize, whoa, I need to slow down and explain more of something that I have done a million times, but to try to convey that to the student for the first time. One aspect of the personalized coaching has to do with eye training, not color matching. Color matching you could get out of a book, might not help you one little bit when you get out into the field, though. You require eye training. Let's illustrate it this way. You were born with a computer processor, right? Your brain. And you were born with an input device, your eye. But what's missing? Right? The software. You have to download the software and install the software. And typically software runs a series of queries as far as what is the eye seeing and how do we interpret that and what do we need to do. So you have this back and forth with the eye and the processor, your brain. So I encourage folks to not to fall prey to the common misconception that I can't mix color, right? That's too hard for me. I can never get that right. It's as simple as writing the software, installing the software. It's as simple as that. You can easily do it. But what we find in the industry is that folks that are teaching color don't really understand it. And they try to make it too complex. It gets way over our head. We don't need it to be complex. We need it to be simple and useful for us in the field. The instructor needs to understand fully how to convey that simplicity to the student. That way, when the student goes into the field, he has a clear picture and he can work confidently in the field. Now, some have felt that since they can't mix color by eye, they need to rely on a computer to read the color and look at the formula and mix the formula. But I'm here to tell you that you will do faster work by eye in our particular business. I was asked at a seminar one time to demonstrate the use of the color reader. So Before the class started, I used the color reader to read the color on a piece of furniture, and it gave me the formula number. So I looked up the number, there's the formula, mixed the formula on the scale, and we had a color that we couldn't use. The color wasn't intense enough to use at all. By the time you made it intense enough, what are you going to have? 10 gallons of color mixed up? It's unusable. For certain colors, of course, you will learn in the class, you have to start with the most intense color first and diminish from there. And so by eye, we got the color quickly. And whereas by trusting another device, why we had a color that we couldn't use at all. So eye training is so interesting, and it's going to overcome a lot of your presupposed hurdles in this industry. I view color matching as sort of a game to be played. And you know, like any game, there has to be a challenge to meet first, right? And the challenge is what makes the game interesting. If there was no challenge, it would be boring and we wouldn't play. Winning is also fun. That's another incentive for playing. But winning is not worth anything at all if there wasn't a challenge to be met to begin with. So what makes a game fun is the combination of the challenge and the winning. And we have both of those things with color matching. Yes, it's a challenge, but we can meet the challenge and we can win. It's work that's fun. One student that has recently taken the class faced this repair as his first field repair. And this is the very first time that he's done the double needle blind stitch. And look at the pull on this. So we've drawn a white line, but that's hard to see here. So here's a little graphic on top. Just to show that the wider the pull, the longer the taper needs to be so that we don't end up with a pleat in the end result. He said this is something he would never, ever dream of trying. But he did so well and got it done so quickly. This was on a trade-in vehicle that the dealer decided to keep because he knew that we could do it. This is the student's very first baseball stitch as well. It's on a really heavy leather. And I stopped him after the first ironing application. This again is a heavy-duty structural compound with the plastic powder mixed into it. The ironing method flattens everything out. It melts everything together. The hand sewing thread is flattened. And I stopped him here after the first application so we could see how all of these products work in unison. We can see how nice and flexible it is, and yet it has the same weight as the thick leather. It's strong. It's everything we wanted it to be. Of course, we haven't finished it yet, but this gives you a view of the success of these materials working together, and this is building the student's confidence in repairs so that when he goes home, there's nothing that he can't undertake. Let's take a look for a moment on how this new presentation better engages the student. As I mentioned, each page that I use as an outline for instruction now becomes a question page for the student. So in this workbook page, this is talking about pigmented leather repair, and it will provide a quick reference guide for the student. To set the stage, we have the general question, what are the two components of any repair? And it's not product and method. This is not a test. This is not an exam for the student. These questions provide the basis for discussion. They are the springboard for the animated discussion with the student. When I told Ernita that I was going to change from a pre-printed page to a question page to interact with the student, she said, "Oh, so you're making a workbook." And I thought, genius. So that's where the name Interactive Workbook comes from. I've discovered that we're so busy in the class, often the student fails to take notes. And I always encourage taking notes. This way, it's already built into the program. The student can stop, take notes. He writes in the answer, and that's a memory device. So in addition to the question, what are the two components of any repair, a follow-up question could be, what are some examples of each component? Then we'll have demonstrated, and the student will do each of these types of repair in pigmented leather. The puncture or burn hole, he will list the products used and the method used. And a good follow-up question for this is, what is the reason or principle behind that method for that particular damage? Therefore, the student is more engaged in the work. He or she not only knows what to do, but why he's doing it. In the end, we focus on each targeted item, each targeted product to use for that item, and each targeted repair method. One difficulty that I've run into is that the student embarking in the business, or say working with another company assigned to learn the business, they consult with the supplier alone. So just consulting with the supplier, of course, he's going to fill up your cart, right? But in any endeavor, making a business plan, you want to consult with each facet of the industry, right? You would consult with the supplier, but you would also consult with somebody in the service end to see what's required, what's current, what's outdated. And if you have this communication first, then there's no disappointment later. We can get into some items where we're never going to use these items. I'll give you an example. There are some repairs that I have probably not done in the last 10 years. Why do we want to spend time, our precious time, training on how to do that repair, especially if it's a very extensive repair, right? Similar to body work, let's say. So we spend all that time on a repair we haven't done in 10 years, and if we get all the product in for that repair, what's going to happen when it comes time to ever see that repair again ever? Maybe it'll be 10 more years. What if it's 5 years before we even see that repair? We're not going to remember what we discussed. And when we go to reach for the product, it's going to be gone. It's going to be dried up. It's going to be useless. I have some repairs that I do not stock products for until I get the request for it. Then it's a specialty repair, right? It won't happen today. I'll have to order the product, get it in, right? And the customer knows that that's a specialty repair. And all the product that I get in for that repair, I have got a cost account against his job. He's got to pay for everything because the next time I go to use that product, it's going to be dried up. He's got to pay up front for everything. It's going to be a more expensive repair because, again, it's more like a one-off at this point. We have to take these things into consideration when we fill out the customer or the trainee's cart of products, and consider that when we're doing training too. Now, what I've done on some of these repairs, I've included them as in the appendix in the workbook. So these would be like, say, just specialty kind of repairs. And so I put a list of the procedure and a list of the products that would be used in the appendix here, so that in the future, when he comes across that, he can read that and he can decide whether he wants to order the products for that, whether he wants to spend the time doing that kind of heavy-duty work or not. And it may very well be that he does want to embark on that, and he can get additional training at that time. But for the 3-day course, we're not going to have time to delve into all that anyway. So if you needed an extra day or two for something additional, then so be it. As I mentioned, each page of the workbook can be updated at any time. We've already updated several of the pages since we've started using it. For example, with steering wheels, we've had foam steering wheels and leather steering wheels. And by leather, we have typically meant the pigmented leather steering wheels. But now, because some steering wheels have a suede insert, we're including in the update suede steering wheels. Because we're engaging with the student in a different format here, it's also going to help the instructor recognize his role. This is not a repair manual. A repair manual tells what to do, and the instructor is not a teller. Tellers work in banks. This manual is a teaching guide that stimulates the conversation with the student. It allows for a more animated interaction. It immerses the student in the subject. That's why it's helpful for the instructor. Let's consider the viewpoint of the instructor for just a moment. Many people that get proficient in this industry or in other industries can get egocentric, right? They can repair a piece of vinyl and they think that they're the best thing since sliced bread, right? It's not that big of an industry, folks. It's not that important. We're not that important out there in the big scheme of things if you take an analysis of it. Somebody once said, "You can stand on the podium, but don't put yourself on a pedestal." A guy named Rick wrote that one. So why do people want to instruct in this business? There's some ambition. Is it for status, right? Money? Well, there's not much money in it. We can make more money staying home, that's for sure. But think about this. The instructor is there to serve the needs of the student. Now, in a restaurant, who's the most important person in the restaurant? Is it the one paying for the meal, or is it the server? Okay? As the instructor, we're serving the one that's paying for the instruction. So we're not the most important person in the room. Anybody that's ever been to a seminar where I've been instructing knows full well that I start out the day like this. After somebody introduces me, I say, be sure that all I am is a fellow technician like yourself. So instead of picturing me up here as an instructor over the student, no, I'm just a technician like yourself. We're equals. Then I say, I have been asked to come and share my experience with you. So if there's any way that I can be of service to you, let me know. Now, who's the most important person there? The student, right? The teacher is here to serve. Self-serving instructors, we don't need. And that's what we've been seeing. But we want to change that perception of the instructor. Somebody that's there for their own selfish interest, self-serving, that's not going to help the student. That's not going to engage the student in the class. It's not going to allow for good communication. Self-serving instructors need not apply. A good example of an instructor in our industry is someone you know from this channel, Gary Babinick. The reason I enjoy Gary so much is the same reason that he's been asked to instruct at various seminars. That's because not only is he passionate about the work he's doing, but he's passionate about helping fellow technicians. He's tired of seeing the work that the vast majority are doing out there, and he sees that there needs to be more craftsmanship involved in our industry, and he is willing to help and donate his energies to make that happen. Another aspect of the personalized coaching that I failed to mention is in all of the things that I do that I just take for granted, second nature to me, I don't realize it's the student's first time. A student may have never used a heat gun on vinyl ever before, and they're a bit hesitant. They think they're going to burn the car up, right? And so personalized coaching might involve me getting my hand right in there and helping him hold the heat gun. And he's resisting, right? Because he's afraid to burn the vinyl. But I'm holding the heat gun along with him, right? And letting him see the repair material dry and then get shiny again. And then the surrounding vinyl get shiny, maybe start to smoke a little bit, and then pull away. So in this way, the student gets to feel what I'm feeling when I'm working. So this is a way to communicate. It's a hands-on helping to communicate. For the first time, the student might feel really unsure of himself, like a person taking a driver's education, right? So for the very first time, it can be daunting. Some students have never, ever used a paint gun. And whereas I take it for granted, there is so much to be discussed in the painting. And in the guide, there are 7 different ways that we use the paint gun artistically, right? So we don't use it the same way as someone else may have told you how a gun is supposed to be used, because we're using it artistically. We break a lot of the rules, but it's for a specific purpose. And that can only be done with specific, personalized coaching in our industry. How does the workbook help to evaluate the progress of the student? Well, as we mentioned, the workbook is in question form, but it's not a test of the student. It's not an exam. If anything, it's a test of the instructor. If the student can't fill in the answer to the question, then that should motivate the instructor to find a better way to reach the student. So this should be a new way of thinking as well. The questions are not a test of the student, it's a test of the instructor. Let's talk for just a moment about the workbook being or providing for the criteria for certification in our industry. Now, you might say, Rick, that would be very presumptuous for you to say that you're the arbiter of what involves certification in this industry. Yes, I agree with you, and I've said so in past videos. I've mentioned the need, the advisability of certification for people in our industry, so both from the viewpoint of the dealerships and for working in individuals' private homes. Certification would definitely go a long way to building confidence and trust in our industry. But no one has taken that seriously. I haven't got one call, one message, one text, one email, one pigeon delivery. No one seems to be interested in certification. And so that's what we're also providing with the interactive workbook, whether anyone's interested in it or not. What would be nice, in my opinion, is for there to be a board of directors that could be taken from various aspects of our industry, from the supply side, from the franchise side, from independents in the field, a board of directors in a nonprofit that could come to some conclusion about basic procedures, basic things to measure up to in order to be certified, to add to the credibility and the trust and confidence in technicians in our industry. So I'm not the one to say who's to do all of that, but the bottom line is no one has ventured to say that they're even interested in the slightest in that regard. But here again, I've done all the work for you. So if this helps, the work has been done. You don't have to do the work, okay? And as far as I'm concerned, if no one is interested in taking this up industry-wide, I'm good. I am totally good with that. This interactive workbook is something that I have developed for me. It's my way of modernizing instruction in our industry, and it's my way of better interacting with the student and engaging with the student, because I want to serve the student in the best possible way.